Welcome back to our channel, the place where we journey together through the hidden narratives of history and spirituality. Have you ever wondered if there are overlooked corners in the ancient scriptures we often just skim through? Are there figures, especially women, who wielded such immense power and influence that their actions rerouted the very course of destiny in ways no one could have foreseen? Today, we invite you on a special expedition to pull back the curtain of secrecy and look directly into the lives of 5 women considered to embody some of the most dangerous elements, according to certain interpretations of the Bible. But dangerous here isn't merely about swords or poison. It's the danger latent in ambition, in cunning, in deadly allure, or even in a soul's deepest despair. We won't just recount their stories, we'll delve deeper into the context, motivations, and the far-reaching consequences of their actions. Consequences that might leave you pondering for a long time. And I promise you, at the end of this journey, there's a truth, a perspective you might never have considered, an unexpected connection between all these seemingly disparate pieces. It will make you reevaluate everything. But before we turn the first page of this dramatic saga, I'm curious, where in the world are you joining us from, and what time is it for you right now? Drop a comment below. Let our channel feel that connection from every corner of the globe. It's wonderful to know that no matter the time zone, we're sharing this moment together. All right, without further ado, let's begin with our first figure, a woman who lived amidst the opulence of ancient Egypt, whose moment of weakness nearly submerged the future of an entire people. This is Potiphar's wife. The Bible contains many accounts of transgressions and acts against divine law. God's judgment, often described metaphorically, is ever present. Yet not all who are wicked and dangerous appear as we might expect. The stories of the women we're about to explore in this episode will illuminate this. Let's start with the one considered the least dangerous on our list today, ranking at number 5, Potiphar's wife. She lived in ancient Egypt during the time when Joseph, one of Jacob's sons, was sold into slavery by his own envious brothers. Joseph, despite his youth, quickly demonstrated remarkable talent and character. He was purchased by Potiphar, a respected official, the captain of Pharaoh's guard. Potiphar held a high-ranking position, wielding considerable prestige and influence in the Egyptian court. Recognizing Joseph's managerial skills and the divine favor Ochavidno upon him, Potiphar entrusted the young man with the stewardship of his entire household. Potiphar's wife, a figure unnamed in the scriptures, is known in historical texts and retellings for one infamous act, her attempt to seduce Joseph. The Bible portrays her as a woman driven by desire and, perhaps, by the boredom or a longing for a different kind of control within her luxurious yet possibly confining life. She persistently, day after day, sought to lure Joseph into adultery. This is detailed in Genesis chapter 39. The narrative recounts that the master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph with longing and said, "Lie with me." But Joseph, a man who feared God and was loyal to his master, steadfastly refused. He replied, "My master has entrusted everything in this house to me. He has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" Despite this, she did not relent, continuing her advances daily. He maintained his integrity, paying no heed to her solicitations. When Joseph consistently spurned her adulterous proposals, Potiphar's wife, her desire turning to rage and shame, decided to lie to humiliate him. One day, when the house was empty with no other servants present, she grabbed Joseph's garment, once again pressuring him to comply with her wishes. Joseph, in his struggle to escape, fled Bahar, leaving his garment in the hands of the woman, now seething with anger and embarrassment. In her fury and frustration at being rejected, she falsely accused Joseph of attempting to rape her, keeping his garment as supposed evidence. When Potiphar returned and heard his wife's fabricated story that the Hebrew slave had tried to violate her, He was enraged. Believing his wife implicitly, he ordered Joseph to be thrown into prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. Clearly, Potiphar's wife lied and acted out of malice, causing Joseph to be unjustly accused. But ultimately, this adversity was part of God's larger plan. Even while enduring wrongful imprisonment, Joseph was not alone. The Lord was with him. The chief jailer showed Joseph favor, recognizing his talent, character, and integrity. Genesis states, "But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison." The keeper of the prison entrusted Joseph with the responsibility of overseeing all the other prisoners. He didn't need to worry about anything under Joseph's charge because God made him successful in all he did. Joseph's time in prison, though challenging, became a crucial milestone, a necessary stepping stone in his life. One night, Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, had a strange dream about 7 fat cows being devoured by 7 lean cows, and another dream about 7 plump ears of grain being swallowed by 7 thin ears. The king summoned all the magicians and wise men of Egypt, but none could interpret the dreams. At this point, a cupbearer who had been imprisoned with Joseph and had his dream interpreted by him remembered Joseph's special ability. Joseph was then brought from the dungeon to the royal palace to interpret Pharaoh's dreams. He explained that Egypt would experience 7 years of abundant harvest, followed by 7 years of severe famine, and advised Pharaoh to appoint a wise man to store food during the plentiful years. Pharaoh, greatly impressed by Joseph's wisdom and the Spirit of God evident in him, decided to entrust this monumental task to Joseph himself, appointing him as vizier, second in command only to the king. In the end, the wrongful actions stemming from the selfish desires of Potiphar's wife inadvertently paved the way for Joseph's rise and the salvation of countless people, including his own family, during the 7 years of famine. Although she, as far as we know from the scriptures, faced no direct punishment for her actions, God's plan was perfectly executed. This demonstrates that God can transform even the most malicious intentions and dire circumstances into opportunities for good, serving a higher and more glorious purpose. Fortunately, Potiphar's wife contributed nothing to that glory. She is remembered only for her lies and her failed attempt at adultery, a blemish in the story of God's faithfulness and power. She serves as a prime example of how personal selfishness and lust can inflict suffering on the innocent, but also shows that even the darkest actions cannot thwart the grand designs of the Almighty. The story of Potiphar's wife shows us the destructive power of deceit and unchecked desire, but that's just the beginning. Now we turn to the 4th figure on our list, a woman whose name is synonymous with classic betrayal, one who used her beauty and charm to bring down one of the most powerful heroes of Israel. This is Delilah. Many may commit errors, even crimes, but few cause repercussions as severe and iconic as Delilah. Her story is told in the book of Judges during a chaotic period when Israel had no king. At that time, the Israelites were frequently in conflict with neighboring peoples, and their most prominent enemy was the Philistines. Delilah lived in the valley of Sorek, an area closely associated with the Philistines, Israel's sworn enemies. For reasons not entirely clear, she had a close relationship with the Philistine lords, who constantly sought to undermine the Israelites. She is infamous for her role in the downfall of Samson, one of the great judges and a hero of Israel. Samson, endowed with extraordinary strength by God, sowed terror among the Philistine armies. His enemies desperately wanted to discover the secret of his strength to subdue and destroy him. Thus, they used Delilah as a pawn, a tool to achieve their ends. The Philistine lords promised her a very large sum of silver, 1,100 pieces from each of them, if she could uncover the secret of Samson's power. Driven by greed and perhaps vanity, Delilah agreed to their plan. Delilah used her beauty and allure to seduce and captivate Samson. She approached him using sweet, gentle words, trying to coax out the secret of his incredible strength. Although Samson refused multiple times, even deceiving her 3 times about the source of his power, he eventually succumbed to her persistence and incessant nagging. The book of Judges describes her relentless pursuit, and when she pressed him hard with her words day after day and urged him, his soul was vexed to death. Tormented and perhaps deeply in love with Delilah, Samson finally revealed the truth. He had never cut his hair because he was a Nazirite, set apart for God from his mother's womb. If his hair were cut, his strength would leave him, and he would become as weak as any other man. Upon learning the truth, Delilah took advantage of Samson's vulnerability. She lulled him to sleep on her lap, then called a man to cut off the 7 locks of Samson's hair. Instantly, his strength departed from him. Samson became a tragic victim of betrayal. When his hair was cut, he lost all his extraordinary power. The Philistines seized this opportunity, stormed in, captured him, gouged out his eyes, bound him with bronze fetters, and threw him into prison. There, the once mighty hero of Israel was forced to do the demeaning work of grinding at the mill, an ultimate humiliation for a judge, a man chosen by God. As for Delilah, she received her promised reward, 1,100 pieces of silver from each Philistine lord. This enormous sum shows the Philistines' desperation to defeat Samson and Delilah's crucial role in it. Delilah's subsequent fate is not detailed in the Bible. However, her actions had immense consequences, but the story didn't end there. During his captivity, Samson's hair began to grow back, symbolically representing the gradual return of his strength. During a great festival of the Philistines in the temple of their god Dagon, where they gathered to celebrate their victory and mock Samson, he prayed to God, asking him to restore his strength one last time to avenge his eyes. God granted his request. Samson, his strength renewed, pushed with all his might against the 2 central pillars of the temple, causing the structure to collapse, killing thousands of Philistines, including their rulers and himself. This final act of Samson was not just a sign of revenge for the pain of betrayal, but also a devastating blow to the Philistine leadership. Although Delilah is never mentioned again, her pivotal role in this story highlights themes of betrayal, deceit, and the consequences of opposing God's chosen ones. Delilah's story serves as a stark reminder of the destructive power of greed and manipulation. Her betrayal caused Samson immense suffering, but ultimately it also led to the downfall of the Philistine rulers who had used her for their military gain. Delilah's legacy is a costly lesson on the price of treachery, a lesson many continue to repeat. She embodies dangerous allure, capable of weakening even the strongest if they allow passion and a lack of vigilance to lead them astray. From Delilah's betrayal for silver, we move to a story even more steeped in power and vengeance. Our third figure, Herodias, is a name linked to one of the most tragic events in the New Testament. She is a testament to how resentment and wounded pride can lead to devastating decisions. Herodias was a prominent member of the Herodian dynasty, a ruling family in Judea under Roman protection. Members of this family often intermarried to consolidate power. Initially, Herodias married Herod Philip I, her uncle. However, she later left him to marry his half-brother Herod Antipas, tetrarch of Galilee and Perea. This marriage, based on political calculations and personal desires, was immediately controversial. Herodias divorcing her former husband to marry her brother-in-law was seen as contrary to Jewish Mosaic law, which forbade a man from marrying his brother's wife while the brother was still alive. Herodias became notorious for her deep-seated animosity towards John the Baptist, a prophet highly respected by the people. John had publicly condemned her unlawful marriage to King Herod Antipas, calling it a sin. Herodias, feeling intensely angered and humiliated by John's blunt accusations, harbored a grudge and sought every means to retaliate. She wanted John dead, But Herod Antipas, though he had imprisoned John to appease Herodias, somewhat respected and feared John, knowing him to be a righteous and holy man, and was initially reluctant to kill him. Herodias's ultimate opportunity to enact her revenge came during King Herod's birthday feast. Amidst the festive atmosphere, Herodias instigated her daughter, Salome, her child with her previous husband, Herod Philip II, to perform a dance to entertain King Herod and his guests. Salome, with her beauty and dancing skill, captivated the king and all present. King Herod, in a moment of elation and perhaps influenced by wine, was so pleased that he declared before everyone that he would give Salome anything she desired, even up to half his kingdom. Salome, young and influenced by her mother, went out and asked Herodias what she should request, and Herodias, with her unyielding hatred, did not miss the chance. She told her daughter to ask the king for the head of John the Baptist on a platter. Salome returned and said to the king, "I want you to give me at once the head of John the Baptist on a platter." King Herod, though unwilling to carry out such a brutal request, as he still had some respect for John the Baptist and also feared the people's reaction, was compelled by his oath made before his guests, and not wanting to lose face, ordered it done. John the Baptist, renowned for his ascetic lifestyle and his courage in preaching repentance and the kingdom of heaven, became the victim of a malicious plot of revenge. His head, after being severed, was placed on a platter and brought to Salome. She then took it to her mother, Herodias. This horrific act silenced John the Baptist's powerful voice forever, but it also exposed the cruel and vengeful nature of Herodias. She, the mastermind, had achieved her goal. Herodias did not face immediate consequences for this crime. However, her life and that of her husband, Herod Antipas, were not peaceful thereafter. Herod Antipas later faced failures in his political career, being deposed and exiled by the Roman Emperor Caligula to a remote province in Gaul, modern-day France, on charges of conspiracy and rebellion. This exile ended Herod's power and political influence. The Bible does not detail Herodias's ultimate fate after being exiled with her husband, but one can imagine her final years were not glorious. The story of Herodias is a potent reminder of the destructive power of unchecked rage, hatred, and the devastation it can wreak upon a righteous person. The history of Herodias is still recounted, interwoven with themes of power, manipulation, conspiracy, cruelty, and the moral decay that accompanies the abuse of power. She is an example of how danger comes not only from direct violent acts, but also from insidious plots masked by a veneer of nobility and subtle instigation. If Herodias was dangerous due to her malice and cunning, our next figure, Athaliah, is the epitome of ruthless ambition for power. She was willing to stain her hands with the blood of her own relatives to seize and maintain the throne. Athaliah's story is one of the darkest chapters in the history of the kings of Judah. Athaliah was the daughter of King Ahab and Queen Jezebel of the northern kingdom of Israel, a dynasty notorious for idolatry and brutal rule. Her marriage to Jehoram, king of Judah in the south, was a political move to create an alliance between the two kingdoms of Israel and Judah. However, along with this marriage, Athaliah also brought the influence of Baal worship from her homeland into Judah. Athaliah's influence became particularly significant after her husband, King Jehoram, died. Her son, Ahaziah, ascended the throne and reigned for a short time in Judah, but he too soon perished in battle. At this point, Athaliah, a woman consumed by ambition for power, saw an opportunity to seize the throne for herself. With the legitimate kings of the realm gone and power at risk of falling into other hands, Athaliah decided to act ruthlessly to secure her position. Athaliah usurped power with extreme brutality. As soon as her son died, to eliminate all potential threats to the throne she coveted, Athaliah ordered the massacre of everyone in the royal family who could possibly succeed to it. Countless individuals, including her own infant grandchildren, perished in this bloody purge. This horrific act was intended to ensure that no one of royal lineage could contest her power. The second book of Kings recounts, when Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she arose and destroyed all the royal family. However, in that massacre, one royal infant was miraculously saved. Jehosheba, daughter of King Jehoram, Athaliah's husband, and sister of the late King Ahaziah, possibly Ahaziah's half-sister or a close cousin, courageously rescued Joash, Ahaziah's infant son. She secretly took the boy from the palace before he could be killed with the other princes. Jehosheba, who was married to Jehoiada, the high priest, hid the boy and his nurse in a bedroom in the temple of the Lord. Thus Joash was kept safe, hidden from Athaliah's pursuit for 6 years, while Athaliah ruled the land. Athaliah had no idea that her grandson, the rightful heir to the throne, had been saved and was being secretly nurtured in the most sacred place of the kingdom. The brave act of Jehosheba and the protection of Jehoiada preserved the lineage of David, the lineage Athaliah was trying to annihilate. The primary victims of Athaliah's ambition for power were the members of the royal family and the heirs to the throne. She succeeded in seizing the throne and ruling Judah, but the cost was immense. The extent of her cruelty was evident in her willingness to hunt down and kill, disregarding even blood ties and basic moral values. Athaliah's brutal reign lasted for 6 years. During that time, she ruled Judah with an iron fist, continuing to promote the worship of the idol Baal, much like the tyrannical rule of her parents in Israel. But her violence eventually had to be paid for. After Athaliah had reigned for 6 years, Jehoiada the high priest, a man loyal to the legitimate royal line and to the Lord, secretly organized a major coup. The goal was to overthrow Athaliah and restore legitimate leadership to Judah, placing Joash, now 7 years old, on the throne. He planned meticulously, gathering army commanders, temple guards, and loyal Levites. On the appointed day, Jehoiada presented Prince Joash to the people in the temple. The people, weary of Athaliah's tyrannical rule and Baal worship, joyfully acclaimed the young king. The priest crowned Joash, gave him a copy of the law, and proclaimed him king. They anointed him, and everyone clapped their hands and shouted, "Long live the king!" When Athaliah heard the noise of the guards and the people, she rushed into the temple. There she saw the young king standing by the pillar, as was customary, surrounded by commanders and trumpeters, with all the people rejoicing and blowing trumpets. At this sight, Athaliah tore her robes in horror and screamed, "Treason! Treason!" But it was too late. Jehoiada ordered the army commanders, "Bring her out from the temple precincts, and gavart anyone who follows her with the sword." He also instructed, "Do not let her be killed in the house of the Lord." The soldiers seized Athaliah, dragged her out of the temple by way of the horses' entrance to the palace, and there she was executed. Athaliah's death ended a reign marked by brutality and bloodshed. It also ended the influence of her Baal-worshipping family in Judah and restored the line of David to the throne. Athaliah's story sheds light on the fierce struggle against the evil influence of power and idolatry. It is also a clear warning about the consequences of unchecked ambition and cruelty. Under the rule of the young King Joash, with the guidance of Jehoiada the priest, Judah returned to worshiping God, and his reign symbolized the restoration of divine kingship and law in Judah. Athaliah, with her ruthlessness, became a symbol of the danger when power falls into the hands of someone willing to do anything to achieve their goals, even destroying their own family. We've journeyed through 4 stories, each a different shade of dangerous. From Potiphar's wife with her damaging lie, Delilah with her betrayal for greed, Herodias with her cruel revenge plot, to Athaliah with her blood-soaked ambition for power. But all of that seems merely a prelude to our final figure, the one who stands at number 1 on this list, a name that has become synonymous with wickedness, idolatry, and brutal oppression. Queen Jezebel. If you thought Athaliah was brutal, then wait until you hear about Jezebel, her mother. Jezebel was a Phoenician princess, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Sidonians. Ethbaal was not only a king but also a high priest of the cults, worshipping the pagan gods Baal and Asherah. Jezebel's marriage to King Ahab of Israel, the northern kingdom, was a political alliance between the two nations. However, Jezebel brought with her not just a dowry and political agreements, she brought immense ambitions to change the culture and religion of all Israel. Jezebel was a fervent worshipper of Baal, the Canaanite god of storms and fertility, and Asherah, Baal's consort goddess. She actively promoted the worship of these two deities throughout Israel, a nation covenanted to worship the Lord God alone. Jezebel led God's people into the worship of pagan gods, causing a profound apostasy among the populace. She called on the people to worship Baal and Asherah instead of Yahweh, the God of Israel. To achieve this, Jezebel actively built altars, shrines, and Asherah poles throughout the land. She also wielded strong influence over her husband, King Ahab, leading him into idolatry and guiding the entire nation into widespread pagan worship. The first book of Kings records that Ahab did more evil in the sight of the Lord than all who were before him, and a large part of this was due to Jezebel's influence. She even sponsored hundreds of prophets of Baal and Asherah, feeding them at the royal table. One of Jezebel's most wicked and exemplary acts recorded in the Bible was her seizure of the vineyard of Naboth, a righteous Israelite man. King Ahab coveted Naboth's vineyard, which was near the king's palace, to make it a vegetable garden. When Naboth refused to sell or trade his vineyard, as it was his ancestral inheritance forbidden by Mosaic law to be permanently alienated, Ahab became sullen and angry. Seeing her husband dejected, Jezebel devised a sinister plan. She told Ahab, "Are you not the king of Israel? Get up, eat, and be cheerful. I will get you the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite." Jezebel wrote letters in King Ahab's name, sealed them with his seal, and sent them to the elders and nobles in the city where Naboth lived. In the letters, she instructed them to proclaim a fast, seat Naboth in a prominent place before the people, and then find two scoundrels to bear false witness, accusing Naboth of cursing God and the king. Then they were to take Naboth out of the city and stone him to death. This wicked plan was carried out smoothly. The innocent Naboth was falsely accused and brutally murdered. As soon as Jezebel heard that Naboth was dead, she told Ahab, "Arise, take possession of the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite, which he refused to sell you for money, for Naboth is not alive, but dead." Ahab then went down to take possession of the vineyard. This was truly the act of a ruthless queen ready to deceive, slander, and kill to achieve her aims, even for something as trivial as a piece of land. Under Ahab's rule and Jezebel's influence, those who dared to oppose Baal worship and remain loyal to the Lord faced terrible persecution. The most prominent figure who dared to challenge Jezebel and Baal's prophets was the prophet Elijah. In a spectacular confrontation on Mount Carmel, Elijah single-handedly challenged 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of Asherah, who ate at Jezebel's table. He called on them to prepare a bull for a burnt offering, and he would do the same. The God who answered with fire from heaven to consume the offering would be the true God. Baal's prophets invoked their God from morning till noon, dancing, shouting, and even cutting themselves with swords and lances, but there was no response, no fire. When it was his turn, Elijah repaired the Lord's altar that had been torn down, dug a trench around it, and then had people pour water on the offering and the wood 3 times until the water filled the trench. Then Elijah prayed simply but powerfully. Immediately the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt offering, the wood, the stones, the dust, and even the water in the trench. When all the people saw it, they fell on their faces and cried, "The Lord, He is God! The Lord, He is God!" Then, at Elijah's command, the people seized and killed all the prophets of Baal at the brook Kishon. When Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done and how he had killed all Baal's prophets with the sword, Jezebel was furious. She sent a messenger to Elijah saying, "So may the gods do to me and more also, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by this time tomorrow." Jezebel's vow of revenge forced Elijah, despite his recent triumphant victory, to flee for his life. Jezebel relentlessly pursued Elijah and also ordered the massacre of many other prophets of the Lord. The wicked queen wanted to destroy all who remained loyal to God. This persecution created an atmosphere of fear among the faithful in Israel. Obadiah, a faithful steward of King Ahab, who nonetheless feared the Lord, had to risk his life to hide 100 prophets, 50 in each of 2 caves, providing them with bread and water to protect them from Jezebel's wrath. Jezebel's brutal reign caused countless innocent victims throughout Israel, but her evil deeds eventually faced judgment. Jezebel's death was specifically prophesied by the prophet Elijah. After the Naboth incident, Elijah declared that dogs would devour Jezebel by the wall of Jezreel, and that prophecy was horrifically fulfilled. Years later, when Jehu, a commander, was anointed king of Israel by the prophet Elisha, Elijah's successor, with the mission to destroy the house of Ahab, he led his army to attack Jezreel, where Jezebel was. When Jehu arrived, Jezebel, though knowing her fate was near, still tried to appear defiant. She painted her eyes, arranged her hair, and looked out a window, taunting Jehu, "Is it peace, Zimri, you murderer of your master?" alluding to Zimri, an earlier usurper who killed King Elah and reigned for only 7 days. Jehu looked up at the window and asked, "Who is on my side? Who?" 2 or 3 eunuchs looked down. Jehu ordered, "Throw her down." They immediately threw her down. Jezebel's blood splattered on the wall and on the horses, and Jehu drove his chariot over her body. After entering the palace to eat and drink, Jehu remembered and said, "Go, see now to this cursed woman and bury her, for she was a king's daughter." But when they went to find her body to bury it, they found nothing but her skull, her feet, and the palms of her hands. Dogs had eaten her flesh, just as Elijah had prophesied. When they reported back to Jehu, he said, "This is the word of the Lord, which he spoke by his servant Elijah the Tishbite, saying, In the territory of Jezreel, dogs shall eat the flesh of Jezebel, and the dead body of Jezebel shall be as dung on the face of the field in the territory of Jezreel, so that no one can say, 'This is Jezebel.'" The story of Jezebel is a profound indictment of religious conflicts, ethics, and moral values. At the same time, it is a powerful testament to the inevitability of divine justice. Her legacy is a chilling warning about the consequences of abandoning the true God for false deities, and the danger of absolute power in the hands of a fanatic and tyrant. She used every means, from seduction and political influence to violence and terror, to impose her will on an entire nation. But in the end, judgment came tragically and gruesomely, fulfilling every prophecy. 5 stories, 5 women, 5 tumultuous lives. From Potiphar's wife with her harmful lie, Delilah with her betrayal for greed, Herodias with her cruel revenge plot, Athaliah with her blood-soaked ambition for power, to Jezebel, the epitome of idolatry and brutal oppression. When we re-examine these familiar stories through a more focused lens, we learn profound lessons about the dangers of unchecked power, of unbridled ambition, of jealousy, hatred, and greed. But perhaps the surprise I promised at the beginning lies not just in their level of danger. The surprise is that even in the darkest narratives, through actions that seem to bring only destruction, we can still discern an unseen hand guiding events. Potiphar's wife made a false accusation, yet Joseph became prime minister of Egypt, saving an entire nation. Delilah betrayed Samson, yet his death dealt a fatal blow to the Philistines. Herodias' scheme took John the Baptist's life, But his message still resonates, and his sacrifice further highlighted the sanctity of the path he chose. The brutality of Athaliah and Jezebel ultimately led to judgment and restoration, albeit through pain and suffering. This doesn't mean we condone evil. Absolutely not. Their actions were wrong, and the consequences they caused were real. But it shows us a larger truth, that even the most dangerous elements, the most villainous individuals, cannot operate outside the ultimate plan of the Creator. God can use even the worst intentions of humanity to accomplish His good purposes, to demonstrate His justice, holiness, and ultimately His mercy. From these stories, we are invited to look within ourselves. Ambition, jealousy, desire, hatred, those dangerous seeds might still lie dormant somewhere in each of us. The lesson is not to condemn these women as alien demons, but to recognize that the line between good and evil, between construction and destruction, is sometimes very thin. We are called to seek righteousness and mercy in our lives, to cultivate integrity and devotion to higher values. By doing so, we can avoid the temptations and mistakes these women experienced. Their lives, though filled with wrong decisions and causing suffering, stand as clear reminders of the consequences of straying from the path of goodness, justice, and faith. I believe that you and I, each of us, can live a life that glorifies what is good, elevates love, and leads to a full and blessed existence. Ancient stories are not just the past. They are mirrors, timeless lessons that help us navigate the present and build the future. Thank you for joining our channel on this challenging yet profoundly meaningful journey of discovery. We hope that these stories and analyses have brought you new perspectives and deep reflections. If you found this content helpful and wish to continue with us on upcoming explorations, please don't hesitate to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any new videos. Your support is the greatest motivation for our channel to continue bringing quality and valuable content. And don't forget, share your thoughts on these stories in the comments section below. Do you agree with our analyses? Do you have other interpretations? Or are there other biblical figures you'd like us to explore? Our channel always appreciates all feedback and interaction from you. Once again, thank you sincerely. Have a wonderful day and see you in the next programs.